aside from the creators, I mainly focus on the works themselves, and I talk about like the flaws and stuff. I've just been noticing a very disturbing trend of how a lot of these projects share a lot of similar traits, and that's not for the better. Is that they share the same writing pitfalls. Really, these people just don't want to face conflict for whatever. Like, they like these characters, so they can't reconcile giving bad traits to characters that they like. So they have to create a scenario where all the characters they like don't do bad things, but they recognize that something bad needs to happen for the story to be interesting. So they have to create a way where the characters they like are good, but something bad happens, but
Hmm.
it doesn't make the characters they like look bad.
Hmm.
That's the disconnect. That's
It's
why they can.
okay to have your characters look bad.
But your character could have something wrong with them that they have
Yeah,
to
a
either
flaw, just
overcome or
anything.
learn to accept. Yeah, like having flaws makes, because one, it makes the characters relatable. That's the thing. I can relate to somebody who has a flaw about them that they want to overcome. I can't relate to somebody like MC and Monica because they don't portray any flaws. They just are. They just do things according to the whim of the story.
Speaking of flaws and how simple it is, really, let's just spitball something here. Cigarettes. My character smokes. My character smokes. Why? The cigarette has nicotine and tobacco. Nicotine and tobacco stimulate the brain. It either stimulates the brain to make you more focused, or it resolves your stress. If your character has a bad habit that is bad to their health, then maybe bad habits die hard. So where can that go? That could go to your character having a strong tendency to addiction or some sort of issue because they're trying to relieve their stress in some way and trying to cope.
And another flaw, like take Yuri for example. Yuri has a flaw where she likes to cut her wrists because it helps relieve tension. She has to do something that's negative as a way to cope with the world around her. How would you deal with that? You could have it to where she tries to deal with it in a positive way, or you could have it to where she starts to descend to madness a little bit more, and it
And
becomes
that's what
something
base
that
game DDLC does.
exactly. And Baby, that's like you said, there's a thing called kill your darlings in writing, as in, if you, the author, can harm your characters on some level, then it means you and the reader can care about them. But how do I write non-flaws, though? Like, normal stuff. I think another big thing with this Baby Natsuki is for example, instead of like I could write that Sayori is a really good person. She always cares for other people. She helps open doors. She takes care of puppies. That's what Convergence and Mods Like Love and Shines like to do. Instead, what you could do is you show a story of Sayori helping an elderly lady across the street because she saw that she needed help and she decided to go do it. Instead of writing that explicitly word for word, you're creating a scenario where Sayori does these things without writing it explicitly. But because you're creating a scenario where you're showing Sayori doing these things, it's going to allow people to come to the conclusion that, oh, Sayori's a good person because she does these actions that help other people. Or to go back to Yuri, for instance, instead of saying, oh, Yuri is a very anxious person, she's like very shy around other people, like she struggles to like engage confidently, she gets really anxious, and that's why she needs to relieve some tension by using a knife. Instead, you show it by writing how Yuri starts to shake because she's feeling encased by a bunch of people around her. Her eyes dart back and forth because she's trying to find some grounding to stay still. Her breathing increases, her heart rate pacens. Then she runs away to a quiet area. If you paint a picture that way, then the audience is going to say, oh, Yuri doesn't like being around people because when she's around people, her heart rate starts elevating, breathing pacens, her eyes dart around. It appears to me that she gets anxious around closed spaces with people. Instead of sitting down and writing it word for word, you write scenarios that showcase these things.
You want to go from point A to point B, and this is for the character motivation, like what they are intrinsically as a personality. You go from point A to point B. What these mods and these mod authors do instead is they skip from A to W, X, Y, Z. So you have that whole fucking in-between of nothing happening until you finally get forced to endure on W. And when it pops up and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. No, you're not supposed to do that. And let the points trickle themselves through. As you get to that point, you think of, okay, if this happens, then this will happen, so on and so on and so on. Everything connects, okay? Everything connects. There's conflict, ups and downs, and everything in between. Not a single part of your life is boring. Don't write your characters that way.
But I think even for a piece of writing advice, like in Frank Convergence, for example, if they want to do the whole thing where Sayori was being treated as being childish, for example, then what you would have done is you'd have established early on that Sayori would like to do childish things, or she would like things that would be considered childish for a girl her age, right? And then somebody close to her, whether it be MC, maybe Natsuki, or
What
like
makes snide remarks or
will
something.
make snide remarks about her being childish. Monica and Yuri would kind of be like mother figures to Sayori. They kind of like mother her instead of like treating her like she's an adult because of these things. And then Sayori like realizes these things, but she doesn't say it because she doesn't think that highly of herself, leading into the depression thing. And then that whole thing about people not looking at her starts eating away
it's
at
a
her.
catalyst. It's a catalyst to what's to come.
Exactly. So this whole thing starts eating away at her. If you want to go through this people think I'm childish arc, you would establish that Sayori has those tendencies. You would establish that people make fun of her for those tendencies. You establish that Sayori has insecurities about those tendencies. And then this whole thing builds up until you get to the festival thing today, where you have all these people laughing at Sayori for being childish. And then we get the point where Sayori explodes, feels like I don't belong, everyone thinks I'm childish, I'm ruined everything for everybody because nobody could take us seriously, I need to disappear because I make things worse. If they would have wrote it like that, then this ending would feel way more earned. Do you two have any tips for balancing likability with believable flaws?
You can't force a character to be likable. That's why a bunch of things become corny or saccharine or fucking cliche. Okay, so like flaws are usually your generic vices or things that hurt other people. If it's a like, I'm not orderly, like I'm not punctual, that's a flaw, but it's not something that you could write a story about, right? That's just something that happens. That's a part of the character trait. But if it's like, I have a murderous tendency, then that's something. If you're writing a story about Jeffrey Dahmer cannibalizing men, then that's a flaw, right? But that's not a likable character. If you want a good example, go read Catcher in the Rye. A character is written to not be likable. He likes drinking beer, he likes hanging out alone and acting like the cool guy. He's pompous, he's arrogant, and he's pretentious. He's straight up a dick. But because you get to see it from his perspective and how he rationalizes it, you can forgive all of those flaws because you're understanding his point of view. Like, no matter what happens, you know he's an asshole, but you can't help but like him. So if you can understand at least where they're coming from, they can be likable. That's why people relate to Joker from Batman. He's fucking insane, but people like him because he's funny, he's whimsical, and sometimes he makes a good point that people relate to.
I think another example of like to piggyback on what Xavier said, because he made some good points, right? I think a way to balance likability with believable flaws is how you make your character work in spite of their flaws. A good example of this would be a character named Okuyasu Nijima from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4. He's a high school kid who's really dumb. He's very, very dumb, but he has like very powerful abilities despite him being dumb. But even though he's a really dumb character, he's very short-sighted. He kind of has a short temper, but like those are his believable flaws, which are something that not everybody has, but some people can relate to on some degree. But despite those flaws, he's very charismatic. His stupidity allows him to be a comic relief character because he always gets involved in very funny scenarios. And he ends up being a good friend because he's very loyal to the people around him. And if people need him, he's gonna be there for you in a pinch.
And that's virtuous. That's virtuous.
So despite Okuyasu being a dumb guy who has a short temper and can be a bit short-sighted, that doesn't stop him from being a good friend. It doesn't stop him from getting the job done. And that's another thing, like that's the main difference between what makes characters interesting and what doesn't make characters interesting. You see either a contrast or different aspects within one person that are all somehow managed to work together, versus like take the characters in this story. They just have either one character trait that basically makes up their entire character. Sayori, sad girl. Natsuki, angry brat. Yuri,
Thing.
it's like Yuri thing, versus like Natsuki's angry at MC because she was bullied by guys before, but being around MC, that's gonna help her become like less aggressive overall. Yuri being like that straightforward, like that more like open and expressive, when we know her to be the opposite, feels out of place. Like, was there a reason for Yuri to become that way? We don't know. And because we don't have a reason for that, it feels out of place. Meanwhile, when Sayori's trouble comes out of left field, there's no like proper establishment for her motivations as to why she's even in this place beside more depression bad. Then she says, oh, I'm such a child, I'm the worst, nobody loves me. Where did this come from? Like, you were just like all happy-go-lucky like not that long ago. Now you're talking like this. Snap out of it. And then the worst part is, instead of like MC being like, oh, snap out of it, and it's like they're feeding into it like it's something that's always been known and something that like should be handled with the utmost of care. It's like they're in on something that we don't know about, and we don't know about it because it was never properly introduced to us.
Self-deprecation is the killer to any characterization. If you want your character to remain likable and remain something that someone could believe in and what the story could believe in, you only self-deprecate because you need the story to do something. Because if you self-deprecate your humor, you show that your character has no backbone, you show that they're willing to change at whim, and that they really don't fully support what they believe in or what they espouse. Now, if you do it as a ironic sense, as in like they're fully aware of what they're doing, then sure, maybe you could get away with it.
I mean, I think there's two ways you can do self-deprecation. Like, it's either like Xavier said, you do it ironically, or there has to be a point in the story where you actually earn the ability to do that.
Yeah, you have to earn it.
Because there has to be like a really low point in the story where the character messes up so badly, or something so tragic happens to the character that the character can't help but say, I really messed up. I am the worst. Like a perfect example in Triple Trouble, when we get to the point in the blackout scene where Natsuki makes herself look as horrible as she can to the whole club by telling the whole club, yeah, I slept with a bunch of guys. I may be a bit of a slut, but you know what? I'm happy. And she's telling the truth, but it makes her look like a complete idiot, and she knows this. So when she finally gets alone, she realizes what she did. She can't help but say to herself, wow, I'm a complete idiot. Oh no, we can't have a story where the characters just do nothing. We need to have something happen. But what can we have happen? Oh, I know. We'll just create some boogeyman and then kind of like force things to like work together as we go along. That way we can say something happens in our story.
Every time you have something happen, it has to have intent. An issue with slice of life stories is that most of the stuff you read will not have intention. Let's go to the playground. Let's go bake cupcakes. Let's go all this. It's like, sure, maybe you're progressing the day and in hope of getting to a specific scene, like the festival, for example, but is it really conducive to good storytelling when it's just a menial task and you're just passing time?
There's one example that comes to mind about how a slice of life can have conflict.
Toradora?
I was just about to say Toradora, thank you. There's one episode of Toradora that comes to mind where Ryuji and Minori are trapped inside of a storage back shed. It's interesting because it's just a normal day of Ryuji and Minori working together at the store. Ryuji has a big crush on Minori, so he's trying to get to know her a little bit better. But them getting trapped in the back shed story was interesting because it revealed more things about Minori to Ryuji's character, and it was interesting because it changed the way Ryuji perceived Minori. And it's important because these are things that they brought up in that episode that actually come back later on in the other episodes that actually have some sort of meaning, which is another thing that we're going to bring up. If you're going to bring up something in your story, it will have meaning because it comes back later on. For instance, if you bring up the fact that the MC, he does karate an hour a day and his mother was like a karate world championship, there should be a point in time in the story where MC's karate skills come into use. Otherwise, why even tell us that MC's a karate expert in the first place? They call that Chekhov's gun. That's an old standard part of media, like this oldest time. There's a Russian guy, Anton Chekhov, very well known. There's a device called Chekhov's gun where if you show a gun in the beginning of the play or a movie, that same gun you show in the beginning is going to get used in Act 3 when the character picks up the gun to shoot somebody. That's how it works. There's no wasted scenes. If we show you this thing, it's because we're going to use it later on. If you're going to put it in the story, it better come back up, or else just get rid of it altogether. It doesn't matter.
Chekhov's gun applies to anything in the story. It could be even as late as like Act 3. If you add something, it better fucking show up. It better have some sort of use. Keep your mod small. keep your project small. You should only write within the scope that you need to. If you're trying to fucking convey what it's like to fucking win a tournament, then fucking have your story tell everything from the start to the end of that tournament. Don't do anything else.
Also, like
Yeah.
Xavier said, if you're doing certain things like slice of life, honestly, in our experience, these slice of life stories are better being short than they are being long.
Yeah, chunks.
Yeah, like little like 10, 15, at most like 30-minute episodes, fine. Not a 20 to 200 hour epic.
Another poorly executed thing, okay? I understand that Monica is the literature person, right? That's why there's the literature club, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Symbolism from a writer's point of view, okay? What's happening on screen right now? That's been happening. Rain, right. And what does rain usually symbolize? Sadness. And remember when Sayori started to think about killing herself and going to the roof? It started to get cloudy because she's like the bundle of sunshine. Remember that? And it's been raining ever since. It's because now you're in the sadness arc, right? It's been sad ever since. So it's supposed to be pitching the mood. And you know what you don't do when you do that? You don't say that the rain is because of sadness. When you have the symbolism there, so they intuitively know, you know what? This is sad right now. No wonder why it's raining. You don't have a fucking quote saying, yeah, when you're sad, you have to cry because you're sad. It's like rain. It's like clouds in the sky.
Natsuki said, what's the difference between a happy and a corny ending? I think I would say a happy ending is all conflicts are resolved. Everybody's better off at the end of the story than they are at the beginning of the story. Like, I guess an example of this, like, let's take Trouble Trouble. A happy ending to Trouble Trouble would be Natsuki learns the error of her ways. She apologizes to MC and they rekindle their relationship. That's an example of a happy ending, right? Where all your conflicts are resolved and every character is better off at the end than they are at the beginning. Happy endings sound odd. I mean, it depends. The ending has to be earned, because if the character went through a lot of BS and you want the best for them and they get a happy ending, then a happy ending is fantastic. That's the thing, right? The problem with conversions is they trivialize the conflict so much to try to force a happy ending that when it happens, you're like, this is stupid. This feels unearned because the characters didn't go through anything really to warrant this.
I would agree that a happy ending is all of the things you said. However, good ending is one that is rational, where all the points flow and it builds up to something that makes sense. That's a good ending, whether good or bad. A happy ending is an ending with a sense of fulfillment. That does not have to be the two characters to be like, we saved the day, everyone is happy, they lived happily ever after they got married. That's not a happy ending. That's a corny ending. And if you have to tell your audience what happens after, that's a corny ending. If you make it too grandiose, it comes off a bit corny. You want to make it so you can sit back in your chair and be like, I feel accomplished and it's not overblown. I expected this to happen. I wanted this to happen, and it is everything it needed to be.
That was also one of the things that we implemented with Triple Trouble, was more of a bittersweet ending. It feels like something good happened, but at what cost?
Yeah, but a bittersweet ending doesn't mean it's a bad ending or a sad ending. It's endearing, but there's something there amiss.
There's something about it that's just not, it's not neat, it's not tidy, and it leaves you thinking.
It leaves a door open.
Yeah, it leaves a door. It gives you something to chew on, as Xavier likes to say. Like you said, Xavier, a good ending could feel fulfilling, but a bittersweet ending could leave you to reflect.